Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome back to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage. In today's video, we'll be talking about the heat wave that continues across the desert southwest and the southern plains this week with record high temperatures possible, and then a ring of fire weather pattern with rounds of heavy rainfall and severe weather, possibly significant severe weather across the upper Midwest and into the Ohio Valley over the next few days. And then the long range forecast does remain active with extreme heat building further north and also the big storms moving further to the north towards the end of July. So looking at the overall weather pattern today, we have that upper level low across portions of Manitoba and northern Ontario, Canada today. That's driving the northwest flow here across portions of southern Canada into the upper Midwest and the eastern two-thirds of the United States today. But that dominant ridge of high pressure is down here, and it's across Arizona, New Mexico, and West Texas as we go through this afternoon and this evening. And that continues through the better half of this week, going through Thursday, July 13th. We still have that ridge of high pressure, which means a lot of sunshine, lots of dry weather, and heat building across the desert southwest and then eastward through Texas and much of the southern plains. But the dominant northwest flow does continue. As long as that upper level low is across Manitoba and northern Ontario, we're going to provide ourselves up here into the upper Midwest and the Ohio Valley with that northwest flow going through the rest of this week. So what does this mean for the temperatures out there? Well, we do have extreme heat building across portions of the southern United States. You do see more of these heat advisories across southern Florida, portions there of Texas, including the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Waco, down to Houston. And then further south from there and west toward the Rio Grande Valley and West Texas. And we have excessive heat warnings further to the west. This is across southern California, southern Nevada, and western Arizona. And you know when you see excessive heat watches and warnings out here, it's very hot because typically this is the hottest area of the United States this time of year. So looking at the temperatures for highs today, we're back into the triple digits across much of the southern plains here from Amarillo all the way over toward the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Houston, and all the way down to Brownsville, Texas. We're up to 110 there in the Phoenix region this afternoon. As we go into Wednesday, much of the same, that the heat actually becomes a little bit more intense across Texas Hill Country as we go into Wednesday. The Amarillo area could be pushing up near 105 in Wichita Falls, and we could be getting close to 110 in the Lubbock area down south there toward Midland, Texas there as we go into your Wednesday time frame, and much of the same as we go through Thursday as well. But looking up across the Northeast, we still have ongoing flooding concerns across upstate New York, getting into Vermont, where we had significant flooding and a first ever high risk of excessive rainfall outlooked from the Weather Prediction Center yesterday across this region. And you still see in the dark green, those are flood watches. In the lime green areas here into Vermont especially, those are flood warnings. And this is actually covering much of the state of Vermont, because over the past 24 hours, this isn't the total rainfall we've seen with this event in total yet, but over the past 24 hours, we have seen several inches of rain. Anywhere from 2 to as much as 6+ inches across this region has fallen. So definitely seeing lots of flooding, a lot of hilly terrain up across this region. But moving back to the west, yesterday's storm reports, we had a pretty eventful day across the Great Plains. Lots of big hailers up here in Nebraska, northwest Iowa, even some wind reports as well across those areas, and even a tornado reported up into Washington State yesterday as well on your Monday, July 10th time frame. So it was a fairly eventful day with severe weather across the country, especially in the Great Plains. And as we go through today, we can expect more of the same as a cold front is dropping into that heat that is building across the south. And as that clash of air masses occurs, we're going to start to see more storms develop later on this afternoon and into this evening. Then that cold front becomes more of a stationary boundary somewhere across the mid-Missouri Valley and the Ohio Valley as we go into midweek on Wednesday, July 12th, and even into Thursday, July 13th as well. So as such, we have severe weather yet again today in very similar areas. We have a slight risk for severe weather across eastern Montana, getting down the northwest flow there into northeastern portions of Wyoming, southern and southwestern South Dakota, getting through much of Nebraska and western Iowa, even parts of northwestern Missouri, with more of a marginal risk extending further east towards Chicago and Detroit, and also a marginal risk down here as well, including the Dallas-Fort Worth area, south and eastbound toward New Orleans and Mobile, Alabama, as we go through the day today. But the biggest concern will be to the north. Across the north central high plains, we will be seeing some big hailers. Wherever you see these hatched marks here in the yellow, that's where we could see hailstones in excess of 2 inches in diameter, much of like what we saw across Nebraska yesterday. That'll be across eastern portions of Montana, into northeastern Wyoming, parts of South Dakota, into Nebraska again. And the tornado threat is there as well. It's not a large tornado threat. We're not talking about a tornado outbreak, but a couple tornadoes will be possible from eastern Montana down through portions of South Dakota, Nebraska, and southwestern Iowa later on today. So looking at this afternoon, more of a scattered coverage of storms. First up here into the Dakotas, maybe some storms getting down into western Nebraska this afternoon. These will be capable of producing very large hail and some tornadoes and even some damaging winds in excess of 60 miles per hour as well. And then as we go through tonight, we'll start to see more clustering of some severe weather across the Dakotas, getting into portions of Nebraska and western Iowa, and this will turn more into a damaging wind event as we get deeper into the night, as some of these cold pools start to merge into what we call an MCS, or a mesoscale convective system, as we go through the night. And then as we go into Wednesday, tomorrow, a much larger area is at risk for severe weather. We have a slight risk across the mid-Missouri Valley. This includes St. Louis, Peoria, Illinois, back to Des Moines, Kansas City, and Springfield, Missouri, and further east toward Indianapolis as well. Chicago's on the outer fringe of this here in a marginal risk. Same with Detroit as well, a little bit further north from the greatest risk for severe weather. This is a little bit more uncertain here on Wednesday, even though the Storm Prediction Center has a slight risk further to the south here. There is a hatched area in the yellow for wind in excess of 74 miles per hour, the hurricane force winds from Kansas City down here through the St. Louis region. But also the placement of this could be changing over the next 12 to 24 hours. So make sure to stay up to date on the latest weather forecast, as well as the threat for tornadoes as we go into Wednesday. So as we go into Wednesday morning, this is as things look right now. We have an MCS, or a mesoscale convective system, diving east-southeastward through the state of Iowa, getting into far northwestern Missouri. Along the leading edge of that, we could be seeing some very strong wind gusts, some damaging winds in excess of 60 miles per hour, certainly some large hail potential, and a couple of tornado spin-ups could not be ruled out as well, especially if we have a storm pop up ahead of the main complex Wednesday morning. Then the model, at least the HRRR here at 12Z, has this complex starting to weaken slowly as it approaches northern and central Illinois, and then renewed development off an outflow boundary will be possible across southern Iowa into northern Missouri. That could develop another MCS that could dive southeast towards St. Louis as we go through the afternoon and evening on Wednesday. So still a fluid situation on Wednesday. Things will be changing over the next 12 to 24 hours. So again, make sure to stay up to date with the latest weather forecast. But nonetheless, going into Thursday, that cold front, or stationary boundary, starts to dive a little bit further to the south into the lower Ohio Valley and portions of the Ozarks in Missouri as well. So as such, we have more severe weather. Right now, a broad brush to marginal risk across the Central Plains, the Ohio, Tennessee River Valley, and then up here into the Mid-Atlantic and parts of the Northeast on Thursday. I do think a slight risk could be introduced once more certainty is more certainty becomes with that as we go through Thursday. Total rainfall accumulation now through Friday does look like we see some heavy rainfall, especially down here into the Ozarks towards St. Louis, getting into portions of Springfield, Missouri, and maybe as far south and east as Paducah, Kentucky. Still some uncertainty with the heaviest placement of the rainfall here. Again, stay tuned to the weather forecast, but wherever the heaviest of the rain sets up, we could be seeing multiple inches, in excess of 2 to 3 inches of rain through your Friday, July 14th time frame. And then looking through the long range forecast, does look like the heat remains in place across the desert Southwest and the southern United States going through next week, July 16th through the 20th, with more of that west northwest flow over the top there into portions of the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes region. So looking at temperatures late this weekend, this is on Sunday, July 16th. We have more heat, triple digits across the Sacramento Valley there in California, down through Death Valley and into portions of the Four Corners region and east into Texas as well. That starts to build a little bit further to the east and northeast as we go into early next week on Tuesday. You see more of the triple digits moving into Colorado, portions of southwestern Kansas and into Oklahoma, even portions of southwestern Arkansas as well. And then that continues to build further to the north and east as we go into late next week by Thursday, July 20th, with more triple digit heat getting close to the St. Louis region, Kansas City, and Lincoln, Nebraska as we go towards that Thursday time frame. And looking at that setup, a very similar setup to what we see now. We have that heat building further north, so the ring of fire pattern as we go into next week will also build further north, probably up here into the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So areas that haven't seen a lot of rain this time of year will have more opportunities for rain and even severe weather as we go in toward the later portion of next week. And as such, you see the European model, the high resolution guidance here is showing some decent rains and pockets of heavier rain further to the north across portions of southern Canada, but also into the United States across the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and further east from there into the northeast as we go through much of next week. And looking at the soil moisture, it is ranking number one of the driest of early Julys on record across portions of the central Missouri Valley down into the southeastern portions of Kansas. A very dry environment down here, very dry ground. The atmosphere is dry. We have an extreme drought actually building into parts of Missouri, so it would be nice to see some rainfall across this region over the next several days. But turning to the tropical weather update, still some trouble down here in the eastern Pacific. A 90% chance of development over the next few days here across this region as it moves slowly to the west. You can see this system is moving further and further to the west here ever so slightly. It's over the open waters of the eastern Pacific Ocean here, and as we go through today, development is more likely, and this will continue to trek its way further to the west by the time we get into tomorrow, dropping to a 1003 millibar low there, probably getting into tropical depression or low-end tropical storm strength by Wednesday tomorrow, and then definitely tropical storm, if not a hurricane, as we go into Thursday or Friday later on this week on July 13th and 14th, and this will continue to go west of Mexico. So this is just over the open waters, no threat to Mexico whatsoever besides any possible waves out there crashing onto the west coast of Mexico or the Baja as we go through later next week. But looking at the North Atlantic Ocean, very quiet here. We have a system to watch across the North Atlantic. That's actually heading towards Europe and away from the United States. Another robust tropical wave down here in the Lesser Antilles. That's just bringing some heavier rain and thunderstorm activity. Nothing too tropical down here with that. It's actually stretched out a lot. You can see here just south of the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, all the way east of the Lesser Antilles Islands here, and that's the shear that is just ripping this apart. So that just tells you a lot of wind shear, not a very favorable environment for hurricanes down across portions of this region in the MDR, the main development region, over the next few days. But it is a powder keg. We have lots and lots of warm waters across the North Atlantic. This is just the sea surface temperature anomaly. Wherever you see the orange, that's above average sea surface temperatures. The blue is below normal and the white is near normal. So we see a lot of orange on this map. And if any tropical wave decides to have more longevity off the coast of Africa and pushes to the west, that could cause trouble for the Caribbean or the Gulf toward the long term into late July and early August. So that will definitely be something I'll be keeping an eye on. And looking at the sea surface temperature in Celsius across the West Atlantic, guys, look at this. This is on the upper end of the chart here, 31, 32 degrees Celsius here across the Western Caribbean, much of the Gulf, and then down here toward the Key West region and the Bahamas. It is absolutely boiling over right now with the warm water. So definitely concerning if we get any tropical development later into July or early August across this region. So still want to stay tuned to the weather forecast. Nothing happening now, but something could happen if we get any tropical waves in this region. It could really develop rapidly with these sea surface temperatures across that area. area. Well, if you like detailed weather breakdowns on North America, including southern Canada, the United States, and the tropics, be sure to subscribe down below with daily updates on this channel. And I definitely appreciate all the new subscribers, all the old subscribers, and the supporters on the channel as well. Be sure to also press the like button, especially if you like today's video, the thumbs up button down below. It helps out more than you know, and it gets all of this weather information out to as many people as possible. If you want to follow me on Twitter for additional weather forecast updates, hit the description down below the video and follow me on Twitter at hweather420. I do post on that platform fairly frequently as well. I do appreciate that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching today's video. Again, remember to subscribe to the channel if you're new. Like the video to get this weather information out to as many people as possible. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. I'll get to those later on today, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your Tuesday.